Hey guys, it's Tombox. Welcome to MST.TV, and in this video, we are going to cover the archetype of virtual world. So let's get a little bit more comfortable by going into this virtual world. Now, specifically in this video, we're going to be talking about the cards that are confirmed for Phantom Rage. Now, I know you guys are asking the big question here, do they have meta potential? And my answer to that is, yes, they do. I've been trying them out for a while, and the reason why I believe they have that meta potential is that they already disrupt the current way that we play combo-based decks. Dragon Link, we have Invoked, and also Dinosaurs. They need to hit stuff into the graveyard, and while this particular archetype, Virtual World, focuses on banishing out your opponent's monsters because they already have a boss monster which redirects stuff that's supposed to go from field to grave. Well, they're not going into the graveyard anymore, they're getting banished, which makes it very difficult for people to execute their combo. They need their graveyard, and leaving this monster on the field is going to disrupt that. Basically, having your own little mini macrocosmos on the field is kind of like an anti-version of, or the reverse version of Herald of the Arclight, because Herald of the Arclight causes stuff from the hand or deck to get banished. This one causes everything on the field to get banished, which is, I think, a bit more crippling for most of these combo-based strategies. For this archetype breakdown, we're going to do a card for card. We're going to look into which are your starters, which are your extenders. We're going to do a playstyle breakdown and how to combo properly. Sequence matters. Now, according to the Phantom Rage summary, this set is focused on teamwork, and I guess the virtual world archetype is kind of rewarding players with a diverse playstyle through the use of uniting the cards with other cards. What I'm telling you is this is a combo deck. To start off with monsters, let's go over the archetype gimmick that most of these monsters in the main deck will have. So all the monsters, as long as there is another virtual world card on the field, you're able to target and activate the special summon effect from this card. However, there is several things that need to be met. First of all, you would have to send a card from your deck to the graveyard, a card that is of a different card type. If you targeted a monster, you can only send a spell or a trap, or if you targeted a trap, you can only send a monster or a spell. And once that is successful, and if you do that, you can special summon out the monster from your hand and maybe resolve an additional effect on top. And that is pretty good because you're getting a bunch of free special summons to load up your board. However, there is a condition that comes with it. You are under a new summoning restriction where all your new special summon out cards have to be level 3 or rank 3 or higher. In other words, no links allowed. And at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh, expect most things to be hard ones per turn. For our combo starters, we have Lily and Lulu, and yes, all their names are going to be double up with the same syllable, so I'm going to sound really silly for the rest of this video. Enjoy it while you can. So, let's just break down their effect once so that I can just kind of copy and paste off the rest of it for you guys. So most of these monsters, of course, they are wind or earth. If they are wind, they're likely going to be psychic tuners, and if they're earth, they're likely going to be worm non-tuners. So those are the types and attributes that we're working with, and your ideal levels are 3, 6, and 9. So starting with Lulu, this is your searcher. As I mentioned earlier before, the summoning gimmick of this deck for these monsters is that as long as you control another virtual world card on the field, and this card is in your hand, you can target that virtual world card. You can send one virtual world card with a different type than the one you targeted from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do special summon out this card, all of them have this summoning condition. Well, most of the ones that are currently revealed in Phantom Rage. And then this part of the effect is different for each of the monsters. For Lulu, you get to add one virtual world card of the third type from your deck to your hand, except for, well, Lulu. And for the rest of the turn, you get to get locked into the summoning condition where you can only summon out level 3 or rank 3 or higher monsters. In other words, you can't use links anymore, and you can't really downgrade into lower rank monsters or lower level monsters. It's just how it is. And of course, it is hard once per turn. You can only use this effect of card name once per turn. So that is basically on most of the cards for the monsters. So Lulu lets you set it up correctly. If you send a spell into the graveyard by targeting the trap, you get to add a monster. Ideally, you want to go for Qinglong, which is the Virtual World Gate Qinglong. You can banish that spell card from the graveyard to add another monster, basically doubling up on the number of monsters you add. However, Qinglong isn't exactly a +1, it is a 1-for-1 where you have to still send something to the graveyard. But essentially, you want to leave cards on the field for you to activate your effects. So if you don't start with Lulu, that's fine. You can use Qinglong to get it, and the best way to get it is through the use of Lily. So Lily, the then part of the effect, which is if you're able to successfully summon Lily, you get to, instead of adding a virtual card, a virtual world card of the third type into your hand, you get to send it to the graveyard. If you targeted a monster, you can send both a trap and a spell into the graveyard, and then you get your search, and then you can actually facilitate that effect. In other words, you have to find the correct path to maximize the number of monsters on the field. Remember, you're still summoning out the monsters. All these monsters are just free special summons for you. So that's how it works out for you. Now, sending stuff into the graveyard is great for the extenders, and speaking of the extenders, we have Virtual World Roshi Lao Lao, and we have Virtual World Shids Gigi. So we have Lao Lao and Gigi. I'm just going to call them Lao Lao and Gigi because Shids is kind of hard for me to say, and it's another Chinese mythical creature, much like a Kirin. Now, looking into Roshi, Roshi is your special summon from the graveyard. It is your Monster Reborn. It is your, I guess, your Blizzard of the deck if you want to compare it with a Blackwing. But this one's a free special summon, and it is a level 6 tuner, so special summoning out a level 3 is pretty good, I would say. Or even special summoning out a level 6 non-tuner is also pretty good, because with those two, you can easily go into Altamaya Zolkin. And if you have a spell or trap, you can set it and just start spamming out more and more extra deck monsters. And again, you're not going into links anymore, so you have the option, perhaps even spit out a Crystal Wing for 0 effort. Next up, we have Gigi. Gigi acts as a graveyard retrieval, but it only retrieves during the end phase, making it probably the weakest of the set. However, you do need level 3 non-tuners as well to function with the deck, so this card is still essentially useful. And don't forget, all of these cards, they send cards of the different type into the graveyard, which can just help you get there. Especially if a trap is on the field, sending a spell automatically fetches you with another monster, ideally a Lulu. So that's how you kind of get everything going. So in terms of spells and traps, ideally you want to open at least with 1 spell, just so that you have a gateway to summon out all your monsters, so you can target something and start getting all the additional effects. That's what you really want here. Virtual World City Kowloon is a normal spell card, but it does set you up for that, because the effect is to place a Virtual World Gate from your deck face up onto your spell and trap zone. Now, Virtual World Gates, there's a spell and there's a trap. So in other words, if you get the trap, you can just place it face up, bypassing the set and activation during opponent's turn, and that's actually really good, because now you can actually send spell cards into your graveyard, getting you additional searches once we get into those particular effects. And then you apply the additional effects in sequence based on the number of Virtual World Gates you have. So you have additional effects, which are little bonuses. 2+, you get to get all your Virtual World monsters to gain 200 attack, which is kind of minuscule, but it will happen from time to time. 3+, remember, you don't need cards with different names. It's just looking for the cards themselves. You get to mill 3 cards from the top of the deck to the graveyard, or if you have 4, special summon up to 4 virtual monsters with different names from your extra deck. That's right, summon out your bosses straight up, because why not? But with that being said, 2 things to note about this particular card. Since the effect does say apply during resolution, and there is an effect that does affect the deck, this card can technically get hit by an Ash Blossom Joyous Spring, just so you guys know. There's no confusion there. And the other thing is summoning out 4 cards for Virtual World monsters from your extra deck. The thing about the playstyle of this deck is it does store a lot of cards into the graveyard, and having 4 Virtual World Gates on the field is not that easy. In other words, you're playing from behind because you did not really get that many monsters, unless you somehow set it up that way where you do have the monsters. But if you did, that just means that you've already burned some of your extra deck monsters already, so you're not really getting that 4+ spam right away, and they need different names. So far, there's only 3 names confirmed, so there's also that. So I wouldn't say that it is a complete blowout effect, but it's still a pretty decent effect to help you catch up to your opponent. With that said, you get to place a card. So what are these Virtual World Gate cards? Starting off with Virtual World Gate Qinglong, which is representing, or the symbolism of the, I guess, the green dragon. This one here, you can banish a Virtual World card from your graveyard, target a face-up monster on the field, negate its effects until the end of this turn. That's great. You can negate your own cards too. Sometimes they want that. Okay, so it kind of gives you the Effect Veiler-esque effect. So that's the on-field. What about the graveyard? Banish this card from the graveyard, add a Virtual World monster from your deck to your hand, then send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard. That is really good. This is why you want to throw this card into the graveyard. This is why Foolish Burial Goods is liking to throw this card into the graveyard, just so that you can fix your hand and get the cards that you need, and maybe search additional cards back, such as using Lulu. What about the other card? We have Virtual World Gate Chuche, which is the Vermilion Bird. And for this one, target a face-up card on the field, shuffle 2 of your banished Virtual World cards with different names from each other into the deck and then destroy that card, essentially functioning similarly to a Zodiac Dryden, popping a face-up card. And during your main phase, you can banish up this card and target a virtual world monster you control, increase or decrease its level or rank by 3, which is why you can quite easily synchro into a level 9. And now that we have a lot of level 9 synchro monsters that only require 2 material as the minimum, you can easily work this one out to bring out a ton of level 9s. And you guys know what a ton of level 9s mean. It just means that you can go into True King of all calamities as an option. Now we're getting to the part that I'm really excited about, the extra deck. A lot of these cards, they are super generic and other decks can also run them, which is why I'm actually pretty excited for some of these cards, especially QB. Virtual World QB Shen, which is the level 9 9-tailed fox. I get it, 1 level for every tail. That's kind of clever, but this is a generic level 9 synchro using 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuners. Super easy to make, and it has a floodgate-esque effect, which is the antithesis to Herald of the Arc-Light. It hits the part where Herald does not, which is the field. Any card sent from the field to the graveyard is banished instead. That is... oh, that's quite limiting if you ask me. It's like a little mini macrocosmos almost, where it's only affecting the field, and that's actually a pretty big deal because even spells and traps, they also get banished. It affects everything immediately. Whether you look at Dragon Link, if they use like a black metal dragon to start or a safer to start, those are not really that effective anymore because, well, black metal dragon, if you link it off, it's going to get banished. It's not going to fetch you that red eyes darkness metal. And safer can't get the black or white dragon unless it's sending a card from hand as the cost, which is much more costly. And if you link off the safer, it gets banished anyway, so immediately you're just losing a bunch of material that you need to facilitate your combos. That is already heavily impactful. And even if you look at a card like Invoked, like Alistair the Invoker, he will banish itself if it goes ahead and links it away into Almirage, which limits your material choice. Overall, yeah, there's immediate impact with this card, and it is generic, so you're likely to see these in other decks as well. Now, whenever one of your monster attacks while this card's on the field, you can return a banished monster to the owner's graveyard just in case they synergize with it, or you can return some of your own stuff just in case you want to well, put monsters back into the grave because you want to synergize yourself. Now, if this card has been destroyed, sent to the graveyard, and if it's not the same turn, you can banish 2 other monsters with different original type and attribute from each other and special summon out this card from your graveyard. In other words, it is also like recursive. It's just a recursive floodgate, which I think I really like. Of course, it's not the strongest of floodgate. I think people can still play around it, but it's still enough of an impact to be able to kind of shorten people's turns, cut their combo short, and that's why I think this card is really amazing. And it also has a pretty decent stat line of 28, 24. Now for our Xyz monster, we have a rank 6 and a rank 3. Our rank 6 is our Phoenix Fan, which has the offensive effect to detach 2 materials from this card, target 1 face-up card your opponent controls, and 1 card in either player's graveyard and banish them, which is kind of feels like a little bit of like a mini Trish. And if this Xyz summon monster is destroyed by your opponent attacking or destroyed by your opponent's card effect while you control it, basically, special summon 2 virtual world monsters with the same type and attribute as each other from your deck. So you can summon 2 tuners or 2 non-tuners from the current set that we have. As for the Jaja, it has a defensive effect by detaching material, and it makes that monster cannot be destroyed by battle until the end of your opponent's turn, which is pretty decent for a card that cannot be basically a card that cannot be destroyed by card effects. Well, it basically gives you all-around protection right away. As for the other effect, if you have 2 or more monsters with the same type and attribute in your graveyard, if this card battles, whatever that it battles gets banished. So there's also that, and they're generic material, so you can have fun with however you want with that particular set. Now that covers the virtual world card for card that's confirmed in Phantom Rage. Now in terms of the combo path and setting up your end board, I can say that there is a correct way to set it up, because if you send the wrong cards into the graveyard, target the wrong cards, you're going to end with a much weaker board than what you have for your potential. And in that case, I'll show you guys one potential way to do it here using Lily and a Kowloon. In terms of the end board, you can end with Ultimate Zolkin, with a Crystal Wing, maybe with a Shen, and even Chuche, which is the trap card, giving you 3 levels of disruption, which gives you a pop, it gives you a negation on monster, and it also provides you with you know, the suppression of the graveyard, where your opponent's stuff that goes from field to grave, they don't hit the grave, they get banished instead. The other board you can finish with is a True King of All Calamities board with a Chuche. It's still really strong because your True King of All Calamities is likely going to resolve, because you can pop your own True King of All Calamities to dodge effects like Imperm or cards like Forbidden Droplets. It's actually quite interesting, and once it resolves, remember that your Ascension is able to summon itself from the graveyard, and if your opponent set up a poor board, you're able to just capitalize on that and just go for a one-turn kill right after. Now for the setup of the combo, I'm going to explain every step I'm doing just so that you understand what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to achieve, and then I'm going to leave it at the board where you can either go in either direction. So we're going to start off with a Kowloon placing onto the field a Virtual World Gate Chuche. With a Chuche on the field, we're going to target it with a Virtual World Kirin Lili, and that's going to let us send a spell card into the graveyard. So we're going to send a spell card of Qinglong. Qinglong gets put there, summon out the Lili, and put into the graveyard a GG. And now we're going to banish the Qinglong. With the Qinglong banish, we're going to add the Lulu into our hand, and we'll have to put the other card that we had in our hand into the graveyard. And with the Lulu now in hand, we're going to activate Lulu's effect, targeting the Chuche, summoning it out, sending into the graveyard another spell card, which is another Qinglong. The reason why we put the Qinglong in there is because we can activate again, add another Lulu, and set up this entire combo all over again. And it really just takes one card once you have the setup, so it's really easy. And since we send a spell card into the graveyard, we're going to add into our hand a monster, which is Lao Lao, and we already have a monster in the graveyard for it to revive, so we're going to activate Lao Lao, target our monster this time rather than the Chuche, because we want to put into the graveyard a trap card, which is why I say the other effect of Kowloon is really difficult, because we're tossing so many cards into the graveyard already. And with that, we're going to put the Chuche into the graveyard because we can banish it, and by having two different named virtual world cards, we're going to be able to activate the World Gate. Because those two are banished, we can put them back into the deck and pop a card, which is a good interaction to disrupt our opponent. And essentially, you're just trying to end into this particular field right now, which essentially you have all access to either direction. You already have a tuner level 6 and a non-tuner level 6, which can send both into the graveyard, setting up your Ultimate Zolkin. And that's actually pretty good. If you have an additional card in your hand that you can set into your spawn trap zone, go ahead and set that up, and you can summon out your Crystal Wing, which is pretty awesome. And then the remaining monster, all you gotta do is banish the Chuche, and now you can synchro into another level 9, which provides you with additional coverage. And maybe you can even stun out your opponent's graveyard by leaving a Shenshen on the field, which is not bad. Now you have 3 forms of disruption. But on the other hand, you can also just make 2 9s and maybe 2 9s and a 3, just so that you can go into a True King of All Calamities. So this is the board that ideally you want to be able to end with every single turn, and it's really, really strong because it's just not just True King of All Calamities. You also have the Phantom Fortress Blathanir. That's also a really powerful card. Like, remember, the level 9 and rank 9 monsters, a lot of them are very powerful, and this is what this deck is really good at, you know, throwing out onto the field. Now, to close out this video, I kind of want to point out one thing about the potential of this deck, which is actually coming from its summoning mechanic. I find that this summoning mechanic is actually pretty ridiculous. Almost reminds me of Burning Abyss almost, where all the monsters are able to just kind of jump out. And we know how that really plays out, especially when they jump out and they have additional effects later on, which helps you recuperate some of the cards that you've already expended. That usually comes to become a really solid mechanic later on, and that's where I find the potential to be for this particular deck. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, enjoyed the archetype breakdown, smash the thumbs up button. If you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, hit the subscribe, ding the notification bell, and I guess I will see you guys in the next one.